Jim, thank you so much for joining us today. As we
Thank
start, can you say a few words maybe about your background, your current role? I know you're wearing many hats, so maybe touch on some of the hats you're wearing.
Sure. So my current role is a CIO and CISO of the Dana Foundation in Midtown Manhattan in New York City. I've been a practitioner for 26 years in tech, about 21 in cyber. So my background has primarily been in healthcare, in finance, pharmaceutical. I've been at the Dana Foundation here for approximately 13 years. So I originally started as an infrastructure and data analytics kind of guy, and then kind of morphed into security in my first healthcare leadership role when there was no security like department to speak of, and then all of a sudden this new legislation called HIPAA came around in about 2001, 2002, and folks started to get very nervous that they didn't have any kind of program coverage or really good deep understanding of how to run security operations, whereas I came from regular tech operations. So we kind of joined forces with some of our folks that had a little bit of security knowledge, and we started from there to form the genesis of a security program, and I've been involved in security ever since.
I understand. So the path was really from technology into kind of morphing, as you said, into cybersecurity. And I think that's it's interesting that sometimes we talk to our members and the paths are different. Sometimes it's the military, sometimes it's completely field that has nothing to do with IT or cybersecurity, like education or really kind of various esoteric fields. I think IT is kind of probably more on the traditional side, but I think recently kind of it's more as cybersecurity becomes more front and center for so many people, more and more IT practitioners looking to switch to cybersecurity, or even kind of more junior professionals, or maybe even students in colleges, kind of they look at the space with an idea to make a career in it. From your vantage point and from your experience, what will you recommend maybe some of the more junior professionals, what in your view they should focus, top three things they should focus on to stack the deck in their favor a little bit?
Yeah, I have many more than three, but the top three would be the top three would be: one, take advantage of the absolute abundance of education freely available to you across any kind of platform out there on the internet in terms of cybersecurity education, not to even mention the amount of information from the news sites that you read that can be taken in context with that training. I mean, it's amazing, how much free training, free education you can get just from that, and you could keep yourself busy forever. Number two, get involved in affinity groups around cyber, privacy, risk, what have you. A lot of these do not require you to have an existing role in an organization, and they're desperate to have somebody help them out, to help build the membership, to help build community. It's an easy way to up ramp yourself into a perfect situation to be seen by these organizations that are looking to hire, if this is like an entry level position, or even if you're in a mid-tier position. I constantly come across practitioners of every amount of experience in every sector asking me that same question: how do I get more visibility? How do I rise to the next level? My answer is you have to give back as well as give to yourself in terms of education. The last one is just have a servant, I would say, like a servant leadership attitude. I think of a servant leadership, but have a serving attitude. Try to do more than you get out of something. Try to give of your experience, of whatever education you've learned, your experiences that you may have collected. It's all going to come back to you, maybe not in the same place, but somewhere else down the road.
Makes a lot of sense. And kind of in this vein, I think a lot practitioners these days, a lot of times they realize that being technical only gets them to a certain point, but to really progress in their career and really be exposed to more opportunities than they would otherwise, it's really important to build a personal brand, to be, as you mentioned, to be more active in local community, various local communities. And I noticed on your profile, you're involved in so many different things. Workbench, I mean, we know them very well. John is an amazing leader over there. GLG, I noticed you're an advisor to a range of cybersecurity startups. So from that perspective, what would you recommend someone who is maybe mid-career or even at the C level? I think those are amazing opportunities to, I guess, wear many hats, but also expand your personal network. However, a lot of times the struggle, quote unquote, is that a lot of executives are technical, and so for them, it's a reach. They're stretching a little bit, and it seems like you're doing it very successfully. What do you recommend to those cybersecurity professionals, executives, really, on what they can do to extend their reach to kind of adjacent areas? Maybe an advisor for cybersecurity startup, get involved with GLG as a subject matter expert. What will be your recommendation there?
Well, you can cut and paste my LinkedIn profile and start reaching out to them cold, I guess.
Well, that'll be one way.
Exactly. These folks will get bombarded. Easiest way to get started, offer your help. All these startups, all these VCs, all these other advisory kind of organizations, they're looking to learn from you. They're looking for your experience. They have their own area of expertise. You have your own area of expertise. It makes a beautiful connection there. And if you offer something, obviously things will get offered to you at scale. You know, it may take some time to build some trust. It may take some time to get the right fit. For me, it was offering to help out a lot of these startups, especially in the New York metro area, which is a kind of a unique market in and of itself. It's not Silicon Valley, it's not Austin, it's not Chicago, et cetera. So having the ability to have been here, I've been in the New York metro area pretty much all my life, and trying to impart some of the experiences, if not the wisdom, that I can about for a new startup to kind of figure out and get their sea legs, you know, how to start building, you know, a following or get any kind of momentum in this area.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be reciprocated at some point, if not at that point, somewhere down the road. And you just keep on keeping on. I mean, I just keep talking to people to this day, every day, 5, 10 people, whenever I can, you know, when time permits. Is there some way I can help these folks out? Even if I can only help them out a little bit, it still completes the day wonderfully. And somewhere down the road, the karma will come back and it will reward you in spades.
I think it's an amazing framework. I think a lot of people think from like, what can this person, this organization, what can they do for me? But if you play the long game, there's no resistance to offering help and giving without really expecting anything in return. And the return will come. It's not, as long as you don't make it transactional and really have the patience to invest in the relationship before getting kind of withdrawal from that account. It makes a lot of sense. And it's surprising that not everyone kind of adopts this framework, but I think it's certainly playing the long game will certainly pay dividends down the line.
You know, that long game, if I could just jump in, the way you term that, I think is just absolutely perfect, because that's also a reflection of how your career goes, no matter what you try to do peripheral to your main career line. You have to play the long game. You're gonna come up with bumps in the road, things and situations, macroeconomic conditions, as we're realizing today. Not everything is going to be perfect. You have to have that long end mindset and not try to go for the quick hit. Because, you know, I've seen so many folks try to see these stories in the news about somebody doing something for a year and now they're a multimillionaire. Well, this is a 1 in a million, 2 million case. The steady players make it through the good and long market.
True, but even those, I think, millionaires, it's like an overnight success, 10 years in the making, right? So you
maybe 20 in most cases. This is the part that you don't see in the headlines. Absolutely.
And what's interesting about this playing the long game, to double click on that, people are very smart in a way. They see patterns and their sensors are so finely tuned that you can say words, but what the other person is really hearing is they're gauging your intent. Like, why are you saying this? Are you really genuinely trying to help? And if you are, without asking for anything, the red carpet will be rolled in front of you every single time. But if they sense that there's some sort of bait and switch and it's transactional, I think people are so their sensors are so finely calibrated that it's you're not going to get anywhere. So it's essentially what I'm trying to say is the long game is the only game, because anything transactional people just dismiss as a waste of time.
Yeah, once I develop a relationship, this is what I do. I leave it in that person's hands. I say, I can help you at whatever level that you deem appropriate, necessary, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, I will leave it to you to ultimately figure out a fair exchange of whatever it could be.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been disappointed yet.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of credit has got to be given to these founders, these operators at these VCs. I mean, they're just amazing at being able to develop the relationships, because they know in times like this where it's kind of a little bit more difficult operating environment, ultimately your credibility and your network and the folks that you've supported, they're the ones that are going to back you long term.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I define friendship by how quickly my calls get returned, and especially in
I don't know if I would do that, Misha, because sometimes I get too many calls at the worst time, and maybe a delay. It's not a question of the depth of friendship.
well, I'm saying it in jest, but
Yeah.
to your point, when it's crunch time, like how quickly can you get access to someone? It's certainly important.
I would concur. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, switching gears a little bit. If there's one thing I learned about cybersecurity is that it's never standing still. It's a moving target, always changing. There's new technology being adopted for good or evil, as I think everyone is talking about ChatGPT now, how it's going to be used to craft phishing emails in perfect English, so there's like no tells. But outside of ChatGPT, given your experience and your vantage point, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, what do you think CISOs will be obsessing about? What are some of the maybe existing or emerging threats or challenges that will be top of mind for folks in 1 year's time?
There are two persistent areas that have been of major importance and will continue to be of major importance, I think for at least a foreseeable future. We're not even in the dugout in some of these areas. When you talk about, let's say, application security, more specifically open source security, this is becoming a very hot area, especially for investment, and some companies starting to move into this space. And it's very exciting to see the level of improvement, I think, around some of the solutions trying to address security around open source and all these different libraries that are widely used. We're still in the early days of trying to get our hands around this. When you talk about the greater ecosystem of application security and making sure that the code that we use, on a daily basis, no matter what the source, is going to be secure enough to be able to be trusted and assured. The other area is data security in general. I think data is just especially the way data is not only being used in an organization, but the way it's transacted, the way it's shared, the way it's integrated in and out of an organization, the way the business processes leverage that data. It's just so many permutations of where an attack, a breach, what have you, more so than just the traditional ways that we thought about breaches, right? It could be in the middle of a business transaction. We may not be even understanding how that data flows, much less over an API, which is why pretty strictly defined. But there's so many other areas that still need to be covered. There's still many improvements in the solution sets out there that still need to be made, and this is it's still a nightmare. Not to say nothing about, I haven't even talked about just the promulgation of all these privacy regulations that keep coming and coming and coming. So you've got double whammy at data. You've got the security of being able to make sure your crown jewels haven't left your environment, and then you've also got worries about getting fined, crazy amounts of money or otherwise sanctioned because you've you violated one of these statutes. It's a very difficult operating environment, and these are to me are the top ones. I mean, ransomware is always obviously very important as well. I think we're getting a little bit better in terms of least offending it. The problem with ransomware is once you're hit with something like that, in effect, it goes right back to a data security problem, because now you've got a attacking party that has your data, no matter what, if you pay a ransom or you don't pay a ransom. And the other area that it kind of goes in lockstep with that is this whole discussions that a lot of practitioners are having about cyber insurance and the increasing rates and the encumbrance of coverage that they need to, or the encumbrance of the controls that they need to maintain, and the the eligibility to be underwritten for a lot of these things is becoming more and more difficult. It wasn't easy like it was 5 years ago.
I actually see that a lot of players are exiting the market. They're not underwriting anymore. It's just because
I think some are. I mean, I think now that we're getting a little bit better data, some of the actuarial triangles, as they were, are starting to get a little bit more accurate. I agree. You're going to have some players leave, especially a couple of reinsurers, especially if they can't point to some of these attacks as active war exclusions. It might be very difficult from being able to sustain any kind of reserve levels. But the other thing is, you're getting some interesting, or at least getting some discussions around possible cooperatives around, especially ransomware, anti-ransomware, or ransomware coverage, because it's a very difficult place to be, no question. But I think eventually, once the numbers smooth out, it'll, and we get better at our controls around this stuff.
Yeah. Well, actually,
hopefully the market.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, that the market will level out a little bit, hopefully, or stabilize.
I saw some stats that the number of payouts. So it's not showing the number of ransomware attacks, but the number of payouts and the amounts have come down in 2020 versus 2021, and 2022 versus 2021. So I'm not sure if it's kind of more of a testament to what you're saying is that overall organizations they are more aware of the problem, and they're at least taking steps to not making themselves an easy target.
Sure.
But I think also it's just I think the industry in general, practitioners in general, are learning kind of to adapt and kind of mitigate some of those risks. It makes a lot of sense. And again, on a little bit different tangent, question on a little bit different tangent. I know you mentioned you were in the industry for many, many years. I'm sure you've seen everything.
Almost everything.
And if you're open to this, I'm just wondering if you could share an anecdote without naming names, obviously, to protect the innocent, of the craziest exploit or the craziest attack you've seen. It could be social engineering or something that was just extremely surprising. And what would make a good story?
So you're talking about one that I experienced personally?
You saw, not necessarily, again, without protecting the innocent, without naming names or organizations.
So, I mean, I can tell you one. I won't tell you the organization, but one that I experienced. I think it was one of the first email viruses that came out. This is, now we're talking 20 years ago. But just the speed at which this attack came in and totally decimated any kind of operational capabilities, I think that's what really woke me up to the power of what a good security program could be. This is just a couple of years before I formally got involved in security. I was more of an infrastructure and data guy. When you can disable 6,000 nodes in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes, that was like unbelievable to me. Again, obviously we didn't have the level of controls that we have today, which might have mitigated something like that, but still, that was just something. It was like a blitzkrieg in terms of how quickly you can knock out an organization. And, I'm not surprised in the intervening years at a lot of these, the success levels and the craziness of some of this stuff, because, there's only so many controls you can put on an organization, on their devices, on their assets. We've talked about the basic people, process, technology triad, but we keep leaving out the people part and the education, and or leaving it as like a tertiary thing to be checked off as a box, without really involving our people, without educating them, without really giving them a stake in the game. I think long term, it's going to be very hard to reach success overall.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then to your point, often, I mean, you can upgrade your tech stack, but users need to be on board as well. And oftentimes they are the weakest link. Actually, if we're talking about the crazy stories, the one that I was amazed. There was a technology company in California. So sophisticated people who kind of understand technology, understand cybersecurity. There was a company picnic on Friday, and the attacker must have picked it up on I don't know, Facebook or somewhere. So they knew that this event was coming. On Saturday, an email went, like very simple email. Hey, it was so much fun the picnic yesterday. Check out the pictures. And there was a link. Done. So just that's simple. It's like very just, and it's contextual, right? So you've been to a picnic. It's expected that someone would share pictures, and obviously, if alcohol was involved, people want to see if they looked and there was like something funny going on. It's so almost an instinct, right? It's how can you defend against something like this? It's just
expert reconnaissance and first class social engineering. I mean, it takes effort. It's not something that can be automated. That's somebody that's really dedicated to doing. That's a scary thing. If you have folks that are dedicated and willing to go to the lengths that you just described in that particular example, which was contextually phenomenal, it's going to take your people, educating your people and keeping them on alert for things of this nature. And it's not the easiest thing to do, but we're not doing ourselves any service by not addressing it. We Absolutely. At least have to address this, and we have to be resilient in our efforts and be consistent. Otherwise, these things are going to be forgotten. I mean, the news is really doing, half of our job for us when it comes to security awareness in general. With all these things coming to light, I mean, it's a tremendous help, but without putting it in proper context, it's going to be lost like anything else. Folks are very busy, and the urge to have to react. I mean, this kind of reaction phase that they're in with the phones and everything like that. There's got to be some way to snap us out of that, but at least we can try if
Absolutely.
It doesn't work the first time.
Absolutely. Jim, I know we're coming up on time. This was very interesting, and thank you for sharing your perspective.
Thank you.
It was absolutely awesome. Last question. Are you an RSA guy or Black Hat or maybe Gartner? Like, are you planning on attending any of those events?
Yes, yeah, I'll be at RSA. I'll also be at Black Hat. Gartner, I typically don't. I'm not a Gartner customer. They're very good events. I like RSA and Black Hat, but Black Hat's a little bit more interesting. I think the environment is not as crowded, and I just think I'm kind of weird. I like Vegas in the summer. It doesn't bother me.
I understand. Well, we'll be at RSA as well, so maybe we'll have a chance to meet face to face.
I look forward to it.
Sounds good. Jim, thank you so much.
You should take care.